Welcome back. Today on the podcast, we are talking about being with your emotions. If we are going to talk about self-love, then we have got to talk about a whole range of emotions. And I want to just give you a really simple practice to help you deal with some of the hard ones when they come up.
My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self-Love Ignited. Let's get to it.
Welcome back. Let's talk emotions. All right. So, self-love ignited. Love is like the place that we want to be, right? I think if we could all feel more of that emotion every single day, our lives would be better. And that is the ultimate goal. And that is where we are going. But if we only focus on that and we completely ignore the fact that we are all humans having a human experience, sometimes having really, really hard days and hard things happen to us, the story would be incomplete, right? We are all messy humans, myself included. So today I wanted to talk about being with your emotions. And listen, I get it. Emotions can be hard. They can be really hard. They can be uncomfortable. They can make you feel awful in your body. They can make you feel tight. They can make you feel nauseous. And it is completely normal to want to run away, to want to hide, numb yourself from them, and we all have our own coping mechanisms. And these are things that we, generally speaking, learn fairly early in life. Usually we emulate whatever we saw the adults in our world doing. So I know for me, very young, I learned to use food as a tool to cope with strong emotions, right? I learned to use food to numb myself. Now, I know other people who use recreational drugs, people who use alcohol, people who use technology, right? Social media is a great one. You can jump on and you just completely distract yourself. Even sometimes games on our phones nowadays can be things, right? They can numb us, they can distract us, pull us out of our reality, pull us away from the present moment. But to be honest with you, when we resort to these things again and again and again, and when this becomes our pattern, it's actually incredibly disempowering because you're kind of just telling yourself, like, I don't really trust that you can deal with this. I don't really trust that we're going to be okay. So we're just going to avoid it. We're going to go somewhere else. And the fact is, if you are not feeling your emotions, they're not going to magically go away. They are not just going to sort of dissipate into the ether and never be seen again. They follow you. I think we've all probably had that experience of feeling like we just don't want to look at something. We don't want to feel something. We just pack it down and we just shove it down deep inside and we're not going to feel it and we're not going to feel it. But you know what? Energetically, it is always with you and it will bubble up at the weirdest times sometimes, right? Any little thing can trigger that emotion. So it follows you energetically if you don't deal with it, if you don't feel it, but it also actually follows you chemically, which is really interesting. I was recently reading an article. They were talking about how emotions have chemical signatures in the body. This is something that science has the ability to measure. And when you fully feel that emotion and you process it through your body, the chemicals are cleared from your body, right? Like through natural processes. But when you do not fully allow yourself to feel those emotions, the chemicals can actually be stored within your body, kind of like when we eat too much food and the extra energy is stored as fat in our body. Same thing, right? Which I just found fascinating. So it's not just this energy, it's not just this like thing that we can't put our finger on that stays with us when we don't allow ourselves to feel emotions. There is a physical, measurable thing that stays in our bodies. And I think also most of us would agree. I don't think it's sort of a shock that when you have unprocessed things in your body, it can create illness. This is something that I very firmly believe. I have seen it again and again and again and again, that when you have something in your world that you are not dealing with, some stressor, some emotion, whether it's just like a lot of stress, anxiety, anger, frustration, whatever, right? One of those things or some of those things that we like to avoid and like we like to run away from. When you have these things and you don't deal with them and you don't process them and you don't release them, I have seen people, essentially you're manifesting an illness We are always all either moving towards wellness or illness in some way. Everything that we do, every physical thing, every emotional thing, every mental thing, every decision is taking us closer to or farther away from wellness. If you're not moving towards wellness, you're moving towards illness. And when we do not allow our emotions to process, to be fully felt, to be honored, that's not moving us towards wellness, right? And that is ultimately where we want to be. So I want to invite you to open to the idea that maybe sitting with your emotions might be something that you could consider, that maybe it is an option for you. And when I'm talking about sitting with your emotions, again, I'm talking about the challenging ones that we quite often numb ourselves from or want to run away from. And really recognize that allowing yourself to feel things, especially things that you have been running from or pushing down for years, maybe decades, it is a practice. Yes, there is a decision. Yes, we're going to actually talk about something that you can do to help you through it. But this is not like a one and done, like, I'm just going to decide that I'm going to feel everything, because you know what? That would be crazy overwhelming. You have developed these coping mechanisms for a reason. And if you just completely stripped yourself of all of them on day one, it would be way overwhelming. You could not deal with it. And it would be like stretching yourself so far outside your comfort zone that like if you can picture like your comfort zone as an elastic band, and if you stretch it too far too fast, it's like an elastic and it just snaps and then it rebounds and gets really, 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 really tiny to protect you. That's exactly what would happen here. If you just completely stripped yourself of all of these coping mechanisms and just felt everything all at once, it would be so overwhelming and really probably quite scary that you would just shut off and just say, no, I'm done. I don't want to feel anything ever again, right? You would shut off. So this is little by little. I highly recommend that you, depending on what you're dealing with, right? This very well may require some sort of guidance, some support. It might be a coach, it might be a therapist or a counselor. Depending on what you're dealing with, this can be a lot. But if you want to start at home with yourself, you absolutely can. And when you begin to practice this, when you begin to allow yourself to feel little bit by little bit in a way that feels safe, it actually is the path to creating freedom, because you're no longer running. You're no longer hiding. You're no longer trying to not feel things. You are no longer trying to avoid the bad. Instead, you are being in the present moment and moving towards what feels good. To me, that is the ultimate freedom, right? Being in the present, moving towards what feels good. Period. That just, even just when I say that, that sounds beautiful. I can feel like an openness, a feeling of freedom within me when I say those words. So how can we do this? Now, I have heard talks and I have read articles from the amazing, I believe he is a Zen master, was a Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh. And I love his work. I've read a couple of his books. He's incredible. If you have not been exposed to any of his work, I highly recommend that you look him up. But I've heard him speak about a simple practice of deep breathing when big emotions come up. And essentially think of yourself or think of the emotions like a storm, and think of your body like a tree. Now, the emotions are a storm, and sometimes it can come out of nowhere, and sometimes we can feel them rising. We can feel them bubbling, right? There's the anticipation that there's things coming. And it can kind of start whipping around us, and it can feel really chaotic and it can feel really scary. But think of your body like a tree. A tree in a storm is deeply rooted into the earth. On the top of the tree, your head, your brain, might whip around a lot in the wind. It might bend a lot. There might be little branches and little twigs flying off and leaves going everywhere. But the base of the tree, the roots of the tree, the trunk of that tree is solid, right? It might flex a little bit, might move a little bit. Movement is absolutely natural and beautiful and wonderful. But the base of that tree is solid. So when you feel your emotions come up, move to the base of the tree, move out of your head and into your body. And we do this by deep breathing. So I would really recommend that you lie down, find a place that is comfortable, put your hands on your belly and breathe deep into your belly button, your navel. And Allow the feelings to come and breathe into your belly. And allow the feelings to come and breathe into your belly. And you may have all sorts of things come up, especially when you start this, if it has been a while, right? There may be pain, there may be tears, there may be anger. Whatever comes up, let it come and breathe. Be in your body, feel the emotion, and understand that you are not the emotion. Though our emotions can feel overwhelming, they can feel all encompassing, they can take us over. They actually can't completely, because you are not anger, you are not fear, you are not frustration. You are you, and you are love. Love is the ultimate emotion. That is where we all ultimately are. It's who we are, it's what we are. But those other feelings, they can feel like they're taking over. And just understand, remind yourself in the moment with every breath, I am not my emotion. I am not this fear. I am not this anger. I am not this frustration. This is not me, right? And just breathe through it, breathe through it. And I have a personal story to share about this exact thing. A few months ago, I believe it was in October of 2021. I've shared this story before, that I went through a breakup last year with somebody who I loved very, very much. We broke up for reasons not related to the fact that we didn't love each other. That was not at all the case. And he was really quite sick, and he died at the beginning of October. So as you can imagine, that was a lot, right? I think all of us at some point in our lives, all of us have suffered loss. We have all suffered grief. And grief is one of those things that just, it is the ultimate storm as far as I'm concerned. And it hits you in waves, and it can just grab you and sweep you away. And that is what happened to me. It was shortly after his passing. And I was in the depths of my grief then, very, very much in the depths of it. And one evening I was sitting on the couch watching TV, I think, and I just started crying. I started feeling things, but I wasn't breathing into my belly. I was in my head, and I was thinking and crying and thinking and crying. And I was in the storm, but I was in my head within the storm. And I couldn't breathe. And I didn't have this tool. I didn't recognize the tool of my breath in that moment. I didn't understand that that is what I needed. I needed to climb down the tree. I needed to get closer to my roots. I needed to get to the base to weather the storm of my grief. And essentially, I was having a panic attack. And I didn't realize it while it started. I didn't understand. And then I was hyperventilating, and I couldn't catch my breath. And I was in my head, and I was in this feedback loop. It was very, very scary if you've not had a panic attack. It was very, very scary. And part of my brain just clued in, and I went, that's what this is. It's a panic attack. And I labeled it, and I named it. And I went, okay, what do I need to get out of this? How do I get out of this? And what I realized is I needed, in that moment, I needed to regulate my breathing. And I know from past experience for myself, the fastest way for me to regulate my breathing when I am in an overwhelmed state is to have somebody else and mirror their breathing, right? And this can be done through like a meditation app, right? Like a guided breathing exercise. If you are really in tune with your own breath, you absolutely can do this within yourself. And in that moment, I happen to know my sister was upstairs, and I know that she has in her own life dealt with a lot of things like this. And I went up to her, and I couldn't catch my breath, and I couldn't breathe, and I was crying. And I got across, I said, I think I'm having a panic attack. And she lovingly, kindly sat with me and breathed with me and just held my hand and breathed. And as I was able to match my breathing to her, slow my breathing down, get into my body, get into my belly, get deep down in there, get out of my head, I was able to come out of that panic attack and re-regulate. And I tell you this story, number one, to share that I'm human, right? Because I think we've all been, whether you've had a panic attack or not, we have all been in that moment of having emotions feel like they are taking us over. They are overwhelming us. But also to show you that you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. And I want you to have this tool of your breath and that visual of climbing down the tree in the storm, because emotions are going to come, hard times are going to come. It is part of life. It is part of life, and it is a beautiful part of life. Sometimes it's hard to see the beauty in it, but in hindsight, there is beauty in that. And when you can be with it, be in the present moment with it, stop running, stop hiding, and just feel it, changes everything. It completely changes everything. And, I would recommend, if you're dealing with a lot and you know that there's a lot of emotions and you've been suppressing a lot of things and you're kind of like, where do I even start with this? Set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and lie down on your bed in a safe place. When nobody else is around, just find yourself that time. And it might be right at bedtime, first thing in the morning, maybe on your lunch break. Set a timer for 5 minutes, lie down with your hands on your belly, close your eyes, and just be open to see what comes up. And maybe nothing comes up, and maybe it's just 5 quiet minutes with yourself. And maybe something does come up, and you give yourself that time to feel. And sometimes giving yourself that window of time, that container, it can create a boundary, which can create a feeling of safety, right? It's not, this is going to take me over and sweep me away for an hour or the entire day. It is, I'm going to create a sacred pause of 5 minutes, and then we will continue, and then life will go on. So I wanted to create this episode for you today to share this little tidbit, this tip, this lesson that I have learned in my own life, that I consciously practice in my own life. I can tell you, I still quite often will set a timer for 5 minutes, a couple days a week, I would say, probably. I'm still very much grieving, right? I'm not in the depths of it anymore, but it has not been very long, and grief does not have a timeline. And sometimes we are fine, and sometimes the wave can come and the storm can rise, and creating space for the storm, willingly opening yourself up and saying, is there anything there? I'm open to feel you. Come on up, invite it in. It lessens the friction. It gets rid of the fight. It creates peace inside of you. Feel the things, and then you can move closer to love, to kindness, to compassion. And I got to tell you, allowing yourself to feel things, trusting yourself enough to allow emotions to rise, is one of the most loving things that you can do. It is an act of love to trust yourself with that. I am going to sign off here because I feel like I could talk about this for a long time. I hope that you have gotten some wisdom, some beautiful insights from listening to both my story and to the tool of your breath that I recommended in this video. And lastly, I would just like to invite you, if we are not already connected on social media, on Facebook and or Instagram, I would love to connect with you there. I am just simply Katie Allen Coaching on both of those platforms. I would love to see you there. I'm quite active on both of those. But sometimes when you're listening to the audio version of a podcast, it is nice to put a face to a voice. So if you're not watching the video of this now, if you're just watching the audio and you would like to connect further, Facebook or Instagram, Katie Allen Coaching, I would love to see you there. Come on over and say hi. That is it for me today. I hope that you have an absolutely beautiful day. Here is to you loving all that you are. I'll see you next time.